Hey everybody, welcome to Preaching Donkey. My name is Lane and I'm so glad to be with you today. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 best books on preaching. A lot of people ask me, what are the best books to read when it comes to improving your preaching? How do you become a better preacher? And what are the things you should read to do that? We're going to talk about that today. This is Preaching Donkey. We are all about helping you preach with more effectiveness and more impact than you've ever preached with before. The 5th best book on preaching is actually called Preaching and Preachers by D. Martin Lloyd-Jones. Now, I actually don't have a physical copy of this book. I just have it on my Kindle, but it's an incredible classic work on preaching. It's just a great primer if you've never read anything on preaching and you want to go way back and just look at what is a very classic foundational work on preaching that will be a great start to lay a good foundation. Definitely pick that one up. The 4th best book on preaching is called Christ-Centered Preaching, and it's by Bryan Chapell. Now, this book is all about the fact that every sermon, basically every sermon, if you can, and he talks about how to do it, every sermon should have its hero be Jesus, have its focus be Jesus, have its centrality be on the cross. Every sermon should point people to the reality of Jesus, that He is the answer. Every sermon should point people to the gospel truth of life in Jesus Christ. This is an incredible book, definitely foundational. There will be a link to this in the description so you can check it out. The 3rd best book on preaching is one that I love so much. It's called Preaching, the Art of Narrative Exposition by Calvin Miller. This book is just an incredible book to read if you want to get better at storytelling and you want to get better at the art of using story and weaving it into your sermon, especially pairing expositional preaching, that is preaching through texts of the Bible or through books of the Bible, with really great storytelling. Now, the reason why I love this book so much is because Calvin Miller really understands 2 different worlds. He understands kind of the expository preaching world where the emphasis is really heavy on the text, and he understands the topical world where the emphasis is more on felt needs and topical type sermons. I feel like what he does in this book is he really appeals to both sides, and he kind of creates a middle way where we can kind of do both, and we can preach topically and exegetically. We can preach expositorily, but also cover topics, and we can do it in a very compelling way with story. So it's a fun read. It's a great read. He's actually no longer alive, Calvin Miller, but man, he left us with an incredible work here, so I'd highly recommend it. Number 2. Now, this was hard to rank this book at number 2. At one point, this would have been number 1, but I had to give that to a different book by a different author. But this is number 2. Amazing, amazing book for learning how to communicate clearly every time you preach. It's called Communicating for a Change by Andy Stanley and Lane Jones. Now, this book is just an incredible book about how to map out your sermons. Andy Stanley teaches this method of me, we, God, you, we. It's a 5-point kind of process of looking at your sermon, looking at really any content that you deliver, and delivering it in a very compelling way that draws people in. The me section is kind of this idea of building ethos, that showing that you have some experience with the topic, right? The we section is to bring everyone in with something that everybody can understand, everybody can relate to. So you're broadening the application. And the God section is where you show that in the scripture, in the text, that the answer to the problem, the answer to the question, the answer to the tension that you built in the we section is actually found in scripture. And then you is about how everyone needs to apply it. Like, this is how it works. This is how it lives in real life. And then the we is this vision casting of what if we all did this? Like, what if we lived this truth? I cannot tell you how foundational this book has been in my preaching and really in any kind of communication that I do. Me, we, God, you, we. He teaches it. He maps it out way better than I just did, way more thoroughly in this book. Definitely check it out, Communicating for a Change. Again, a link will be in the description. All right, number 1, the number 1 book on preaching that you have to pick up is called Preaching by Tim Keller. Now, this book, Preaching, Communicating Faith in an Age of Skepticism, Tim Keller basically takes all of his experience from all those years of pastoring a church right in New York City, and he distills it into, here's how you communicate to modern and postmodern skeptics and secular people and humanists and every type of person who is uninterested in matters of faith, uninterested in religion. He talks about how do you appeal to them in such a way that they lean in and they want to hear more. And they understand that you are not trying to talk them into something that they don't want to do, but you really care, and you've done your homework, and you haven't checked your intellect on the shelf. I mean, this is an incredible book, Communicating Faith in an Age of Skepticism by Tim Keller. Definitely check this book out. I have a bonus. I've given you 5 great books. I'm going to give you 1 bonus book. This book is called Preaching Killer Sermons: How to Create and Deliver Messages That Captivate and Inspire by yours truly, Lane Sebring. This book has been out for a couple of years, and it's been incredible to see how God has used this book. How many pastors have reached out to me and said that their teams are going through it together. People that have been struggling in one way or another in their preaching have reached out and said, man, this book has been so practical and so actionable, and I have been able to take your principles and use them, and it's improved my preaching. Now, the approach that I took on this book was to go incredibly practical. This book is all about how do I do it? How do I save time in sermon prep? How do I make sure that I have a schedule? How do I tackle a tough topic? How do I communicate in a way that captures and maintains the attention and interest of my listeners? This book covers it all. Definitely pick it up. There'll be a link in the description. You can check it out. One honorable mention is my good friend Bryan Kelley wrote a book called Preaching Sticky Sermons. It's a phenomenal book as well. There will be a link in the description. You can check it out there. So there are 7 books on preaching that will get you started. Buy them, write in them, underline them, share them with your friends, and you'll be well on your way to developing even more into a better communicator, which is what we want to do here. We want to help preachers communicate better and help you preach with more effectiveness and more clarity and more impact every single time you preach. So until next time, remember, if God can speak through a donkey, he can speak through you, and he can speak through me, which is pretty awesome. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment. What are some books on preaching that you would say, man, I wish this had made the list, or this is on my list? I want to know, because I want to read them as well. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment. We'll see you next time.